there is something to it where some people listen more effectively when they're doing something. And I
Mhm.
know we had a coworker that did the same thing. He goes, if I'm sitting still and just listening and not doing anything with my hands, my mind starts racing. Where if I
Mhm.
actually start doodling, it gives my mind that it kind of sits at ease and actually listen better. And I discover I do the same thing where if it looks like I'm not paying attention in a meeting or with a client or anything, but because I'm doodling, I'm actually, it's better for me to do that. And I almost have to disclose that sometimes when in front of people. So if you do have a quirky habit and you don't want you to throw off your clients, prospects, coworkers, explain to them.
Or just go full millennial and get a fidget spinner, because that's exactly what that's designed for.
Are they still a thing?
Now, on that note, let's go ahead and say welcome to the Medicare Cafe. We went ahead and pushed the record button. Per the norm, my name is Olivia.
And I'm Mike, and today we're talking about a very serious, oh, there we go. Talk about your competition. I think it's something that we saw really ramp up this past year, especially with COVID and people staying home more and possibly consuming more media. The fact
Mhm.
that it was easier to be in front of more people because more people were at home and absorbing more media, as I talk in circles.
Water is wet. Wet water is wet.
Yes. So we'll say this, your clients are another agent's prospect. We have said this for years. I've never walked in a home with a prospect and they said, well, my insurance agent enrolled me in this plan. I never said, well, you know what? Call that agent. They'll take care of
Mhm.
you. I'll show myself out. No, I'm there to take care of that person and by default replace that other agent. That's why I'm there. And shame on that agent for not being there instead of me. Just like if you walk to one of my clients' homes, shame on me for not being there and you're there. That means I did something wrong or I wasn't attentive enough to my book of business to the fact that I opened the door for competition.
I genuinely believe that we as humans only have a finite amount of energy or from our energy source per day. Unfortunately, a lot of times, whenever it comes to talking about our competition, a lot of agents tend to go to the blaming route. I'm seeing this a ton right now. A ton of people are mad, and I'm seeing it really in two aspects. One, I'm seeing it, and again, I know Mike talks about this with those Joe Namath ads and the Medicare 101 and all the garbage and what we're seeing here. Again, people get really upset with that, and I understand to an extent because it's a lot of it is very misleading. The other time where see people get really upset is whenever an individual will call, we'll just say for an example, they'll call United Healthcare and say, United Healthcare, my client called them, United Healthcare call center, they changed them to another plan. Why is United Healthcare trying to siphon that business with me? So instead of putting your energy into focusing on like, why are these other organizations trying to make money off your clients? Because again, like Mike says, your clients are another person's prospect. Focus that energy into what are you doing that's causing that to happen. If a client is saying yes to another agent or to a prospecting material, it's because you didn't have that conversation with them or didn't let them know what's next. If a client is consistently calling United Healthcare's help desk and they're getting switched over, are you not training your clients to call your office first? Are you providing a service for them? Do they not feel comfortable calling your office and prefer to call the 1-800 number, said no one ever? So just keeping that in mind. Instead of where is your focus? Is your focus going to be complaining about these ads or figuring out, A, what is your value add to avoid these types of advertising? And B, if you are losing clients to them, what does that say about you and your services?
Yeah, and it's hard to compete against that. And these call centers are stepping up their game. And I want to know who is behind Medicare Coverage Helpline because they use two there, Joe Namath, and they also use Iron Mike Ditka. And those are two very popular football personalities from when a lot of these people were, in their prime. A lot of clients were in their prime. They knew who they were. Like Joe Namath, we all, if you know anything about football, you know him. You also know about Iron Mike Ditka. So
Dicka. Hurricane Dicka.
Ditka. So it's hard to be against that. But I would say you really need to be aware of who's behind the identity as well, because as you can see from the second paragraph down there, they have a lot of names: Health Pocket, Agile Health Insurance Agency, Total Insurance Brokers, American Services Insurance Agency, Health Plan and Intermediaries Holdings LLC, and they're all part of Benefit Technologies, spelled with the Y and two T's, oddly enough. But it's hard to compete against that. I'm not gonna lie. You see that commercial, you're sitting there thinking, man, I did love the 85 Bears, and Mike Ditka's on there, so maybe I'll call and see what he has to say, even though they have nothing to do with the company. They're the spokespeople and paid to do so. And Mike
It's
Ditka
the
looks
idea
like,
of if it's good enough for Mike Ditka, then it's good enough for me. I mean, honestly, that's what it comes down to. If there's something that they're willing to talk about it, it's good enough for me. The idea is, guys, is that nobody knows the names of these companies. Again, like Medicare Coverage Helpline or 1-800 or Medicare.com. It's not the name of the companies and the reputation of those companies that's bringing in the clients. It's truly Mike Ditka and Joe Namath. And yes, Brian's laughing at me that I remember Joe Namath because I never remember his name, but I'm hearing it all the time now. But again, it's what is it that you're competing against? We talked about this, especially with it being a 2020 election. Your competition isn't just Joe Namath and Mike Ditka. Your competition is, again, what's going on politically, what's going on in the news, COVID-19. It's because your competition is what's grabbing the attention. So they're grabbing the attention because money talks, and you have a very orange, out of their prime superstars talking about Medicare and those benefits, but you're not going to be louder than them. I know me personally, I don't have the pockets to be louder, to be seen more often than these individuals. You have to figure out what is it that's going to set you apart and how are you going to grab the attention. It all comes down to your value add services.
Yeah, and I would argue for a lot of agents, these call centers aren't necessarily your competition to acquire new clients, because they're going after the masses, the people that are just, I need to do something. I want to have as little invested in as possible. They're not going to be loyal to this company. If they're calling an 800 number, there's a good chance the next year you can call an 800 number, and they know they're just calling a call center. They should know that. I don't think they think they're getting Joe or Mike on the phone. So you're not going to have all these folks. And it's also important to remember that these call centers, their profitability is very different than yours. The average call center takes 2.5 years of having a client on the books to see a profit, where we can't afford to do that, because how much it costs to get Joe Namath or Mike Ditka on TV and run those commercials and everything else. We're talking probably millions of dollars if you factor all the markets that they're advertised in. So that's kind of like, I would say, to put it in car terms, that's kind of like Tesla, which is more of a boutique car manufacturer, because they don't sell a lot of cars. They're cool, they're nifty, they get very techie people, but they're not competing necessarily against the Toyotas of the world, which is one of the top selling cars in the world. Because yeah, if you want a cheap, reliable car, Toyota's the way to go. If you want all the cool tech, you're gonna go Tesla. So it's a very two different mindsets when people are going about that path. You know what I mean? So, and again, this is what eHealth said 2 years ago. They came out and said, look, we're not getting the response we used to when we were outbound calling, because people are getting more wise to, the phone masking, where we can make our phone number look like a local number by changing the area code when we call. People are getting smart to that. More people are getting on the do not call list. So it's getting harder and harder to get through to people on the phone. So a lot of these big call centers turn to TV ads, like we just looked at, internet leads, radio, print. A lot of them have letters and solicitations that go out to prospects in the mail to hopefully generate more inbound calls, which of course have a higher close ratio because that person took the interest to dial that number and talk to somebody.
Again, how many times, and I would love to hear from everybody here, how many times did you hear a client say, hey, can you tell me what's going on in my county? I saw a commercial that said I can get close to $200 back every single month. Why haven't you talked to me? Joe Namath told me that I can get, $150 back every month. So again, did you have those conversations? Did your people reach out to you about that? If they did, think of how many of your clients didn't reach out to you about the Part B payback. How many of them just called that 1-800 number?
Yeah, and like Tom said, a lot of people don't realize we're calling an offshore, potentially an offshore. Some use domestic, but it can be an overseas call center where they don't know you. But you know what? For a lot of people, buying insurance isn't a journey. It's a check mark off their box of things to do. So it's not like they want to invest a bunch of time researching their Medicare insurance. They just want to get it done and move about their lives.
Hmm.
And as much as we would love to show them what a fantastic experience it could be to be one of our clients, most people are like, ugh, I got my insurance. I'm going to be talked to by a salesperson. But if it's good enough for my Dika, that you're associating the expertise, even though he ran a football team and didn't sell insurance, uh, the fact that he is a known person, it creates the association, and that's why it works. It's kind of like the 4 out of 5 dentists recommend ABC toothpaste. It's that level of expertise that gets people, and we can't per se compete against that unless you have a very good, name recognition to your community.
Now, keep in mind as well, wow, I forgot what I was going to say. Not important, I guess.
The other side, real quick, is the carriers. The carriers, as much as they support you, and some carriers are obviously better than others about supporting their brokers. I will say this until low cost Part D plans are a thing of the past, which it probably never will be. This is a land grab for a lot of carriers. The more clients they get in their book of business, the more solicitation they could do, and/or orphan accounts. You're not familiar with those. Orphan accounts are clients that no longer have an active agent, and there are a ton of them out there. How many people do we know got an insurance market, sold for a little bit, and thought, I can't make it, I'm not making the money I need to, I'll go get a different job and just forget insurance? Well, the 10, 15, 20 people that they sold insurance to are now orphans because they have no active agents. And that gives a carrier, if they see that account is pretty much stale, they'll jump in it and start working that account, or give it to their call center or active captive sales force. I can tell you Humana does this 100%, as well they should. All right, so I read a great article some time ago about Walmart going into these smaller communities and taking out the mom and pop stores. And this expert came on. I don't know an expert in what, so there goes he could have been Joe Namath for all I know. But they were talking about, hey, if you're competing against a big box retailer, go to it as a boutique style, as you're the expert. No one goes to Walmart to find out about the specs of a television. They're shopping 100% on price. When the people that are serious about buying a television, maybe they're putting into a home theater, or maybe they just want a better picture, they're going to go to a more personalized or more a specialized place. And you could do that by being hyper local or a more boutique virtual agent as opposed to a giant call center. And I think when it comes to people's insurance, that's why we're still in business, because it's very, very personal. I'll equate it to Olivia's world with her husband, Chad. A lot of builders don't go to Lowe's or Home Depot to buy their appliances. They go to a specialized place because they have different needs than the average consumer. The average consumer needs a refrigerator once every 10, 15 years. Builders may need 30, 40, 50 refrigerators in a year, and they need someone that understands those needs. So they cater to that market. You cater to the people that want a higher level of service and get the higher level of service, and you're going to succeed. If you compete against the people that are calling call centers that have no loyalty, you're going to be constantly chasing your tail in this market.
I would also say consider the fact that identify what COVID did to our industry. What all COVID did to our industry was actually speed up the inevitable, which was a look at non-face-to-face enrollments. And honestly, what that ultimately means, in my opinion, is a convenience-based enrollment. It was really interesting. I've talked about it a ton, but keep in mind the baby boomer demographic was identified as valuing convenience more than any other type of age group. So making sure that, again, if you are going to be that specialist and you are going to be able to offer that boutique style, don't underestimate the value of convenience in that. So boutique doesn't necessarily mean face-to-face enrollment. Boutique just means being an expert in an area, being able to offer a range of advice, a range of help on a particular subject, but don't underestimate convenience-based enrollment, meaning non-face-to-face option.
Sorry, I was 100% agree with you, but I have a barn door separating our living room and my office, and I just watched my dog figure it out. Just stuck her nose in and started inching the door over, and she came in and lay down. So good for her.
Can you show it
Anyway,
again? What did the dog do? Can you?
just I saw nose. get in there and start moving the door over. I'm like, she figured it out. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. But
Thank you
yeah,
for
and
the visual.
to go back to Libby's point, 100%. And you see this across, if you look at your local market, you see that, there are appliance stores that cater
Mhm.
to builders. And yeah, you could go there as a consumer and buy, but they're geared towards their client base. Walmart doesn't compete with Best Buy on a lot of things. Like if you want to buy a washer
Mhm.
dryer, you don't go to Walmart, you go to Best Buy or an appliance shop because they specialize in that. And I think when you start specializing, they say the riches are in niches. That does take precedence here in our industry because if you become the maker expert, there are a lot of people looking for that. Again, professional partners, your CPAs, your estate planning attorneys, even people that are in healthcare, social workers, they don't know how Medicare works. They just know it's a claim submitted and claims paid, and the client's going to owe something. That's a lot of them. That's all they know. So if you can become that Medicare resource for them, that Medicare expert, you're going to do very well.
Brian wanted to point out that I'm now the third smartest mammal on the show, behind Mike and Mike's dog. To be fair, I've never opened up a drawer with my nose, so he's got me on that one. Coco
Yeah.
wins this round.
That's pretty good, Brian. And I will say one of the big things too about learning how to become that boutique is and we've talked about this, using all the resources and tools available to you. That's something we do when you come on board as senior marketing specialists. So if you're looking to see, okay, what can I do in 2021 to expand my agency and compete against these Joe Namaths and Mike Dickas of the insurance world, which again, they're just faces that get that familiarity, and familiarity equals trust, and trust equals sales. So I'm familiar with that face. That's going to get me to call that number, and that's going to get me to trust that Joe took their money, so they must be worthy people, which is not the case at all. And I'm sorry, I had a point there. Yeah. And so we have an onboarding. So when you come on board with senior marketing specialist, whether you're brand new to the industry or you've been in the industry for 30 years, we will walk you through what we have to offer. And we'll also take a look at your business and say, okay, where do you want to go in 2021? Let's make sure you have a path that's going to lead you to success. And we make sure we provide you all the tools to make that as smooth as possible.
Exactly. I know we work with a ton of agents nationwide, and what's really unfortunate is that they're asking us for these tools and resources, and they're things that we've had for years. Most agents don't know that we have compliance approved marketing pieces if you have a current book of business. They don't know that we have newsletters that we offer. They don't know that we have forms that help give you an extra layer of protection against complaints when it comes to the annual enrollment period. So again, just make sure you're reaching out to us. That's what agent onboarding does, is connect you with the correct tools and resources that best fit your agency, because what works for you may not work for Joe down the street, and definitely won't work for our virtual call agency. So just keeping that in mind.
Yeah, so I would say more of the story today is be known as a Medicare expert, if that's your focus field. Now, if you have Medicare as a secondary product, let's say you're a P&C agent and you have Medicare as well, make sure you're singing that from the mountains. Make sure your entire book of business knows, regardless if they're Medicare eligible or not, because you'll be surprised how many people help their parents or their grandparents with their insurance decisions. So I've had lots of referrals come from underage individuals saying, my mom, my grandpa, my aunts, whoever, I help them with their Medicare or their insurance. I have questions or I need guidance. So don't think when you look at your book of business, it's only people over 65. Everybody in that book of business should know everything that you offer and bring to the table.
And keep in mind as well, just because if you are afraid, again, we're talking Medicare specialty or specializing being the boutique, that doesn't mean that you only represent Medicare supplement, Medicare Advantage prescription drug plans. We say be the expert. That also means being able to represent and have conversations about things that Medicare doesn't cover. Medicare doesn't cover the non-medical expenses of cancer. It doesn't cover dental, vision, hearing. It doesn't cover a lot of the final expenses. So just because we say Medicare expert, that does include expert of things Medicare doesn't cover.
Do you remember what Chris used to be really involved in when it came to final expense? It was
Diabetes, insurance.
There's another one though too. There's something else. It was a very specific disease that had a shortened lifespan. It was very tragic, but he started making websites and promotions around that. So
Huh.
one other, I forgot what, maybe cystic fibrosis or something. I don't remember what it was. Some
I just
funky
remember
term.
all over
Yeah.
town he has we insure diabetes and
Yes.
life insurance for diabetics, and he just had these little signs with his phone number all over town. He volunteered at the Diabetics Association and did the spaghetti dinners and wore his name tag at the spaghetti dinners.
Yeah.
He found a niche and it worked for him.
Yeah, and that's another niche. If you're looking, and that's one thing I would definitely look at. Is there a disease or a cause that really is closer to your heart? Like I know Olivia is very passionate about cancer insurance and
Mm-hmm.
cancer situations. So if you go beyond just being a Medicare expert, what has affected your life and what can you help people with? That's an even more hyper focus, and you'll be surprised what comes out of the woodwork and people that have either dealt with that or currently have that. They're looking for help and maybe they can't find the answers. And if you're that person, that's a whole nother market that you could get into and help people with.
Mm-hmm.
Feeding people all those carbs, how rude. Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this Friday in the Medicare Cafe Agent Group, we're going to talk about OEP advertising. Can it be done and what does it look like? So if you're wondering what can I say between now and March 31st, we'll talk about that on the Facebook Live, which
And again,
hopefully you signed up for.
yes, make sure you go to your Facebook page, go to the Medicare Cafe Agent Network or Medicare Cafe Network Agents, and click on that. It's a closed group, so make sure that you are a part of that. We will grant you permission. And then in order to register for that, there is a place online where you can go and click. But if you're a part of that group, Friday at 9 a.m. Central Standard, you will get a notification letting you know that Mike has gone live. So that's how you join that. Every Friday, it's something new we're trying out.
Yes, exactly. And we're trying out some different methods too. So if you see us change it up a little bit, we're just trying to figure out what works best for everybody to make sure that if you want to be part of it, you have access to it. So if you're like,
And
I don't know how
again,
that works, let us know.
Alice, that is Medicare Cafe Network Agents.
Yeah,
That
you're
is
going to
the
see
closed
that
Facebook group.
banner. So that Medicare Cafe Network Agents, that's look for that banner and then just join in and we'll get you in.
Mhm.
So, and then of course you can like us on Medicare Cafe on just regular Facebook, our Facebook page. We do post what we're talking about each week on there as well. So if you like what are you going to talk about next week, watch that page. We'll talk about it and we'll post stories throughout the week that are relevant to us in the field, like the Medicare updates, what's going on. We got a whole new administration coming in. So we're watching closely on what they're going to talk about Medicare. I know they talk about lowering the age to 60. Now, when they say lowering the age to 60, I want to make this very clear. That is, it's not going to be everyone that's 16 over gets Medicare. It's everyone that's 16 over that doesn't have access to group health insurance has Medicare as an option. So it's going to be like an ACA-esque type situation. So don't think that, oh my gosh, every single person gets Medicare. It's people that aren't insured by group get Medicare. That's what they've been proposing. Because I was like, heck yeah, 5 more years of people, woo woo. Then I read more and I was like, oh, that's what they mean. So, but
Yeah.
it may spark people to retire earlier and open up even more doors. So just a heads up on that.
That's a very good point. I guarantee if you saw that, you would see a higher rate of retirement because how many people right now are working past the age of 65 because they have a spouse that's underage. So they're
Yeah,
working until the spouse is eligible for Medicare. So that's a very good
yeah.
point.
Like Olivia and Chad. Chad has to work till he's like 105 to get Olivia to age 65. So.
Truth.